It was a hotel key card that started it all, found tucked between 2 pages of a cookbook I hadn't opened in years. I only noticed it because I was searching for a dessert recipe for our anniversary dinner, something symbolic, I thought. Irony had a sharp sense of humor. The card had a number on it, handwritten, 827. That was it. No hotel name, no logo, just a worn card with a mystery scribbled on top. I almost tossed it aside. Almost. But something in my gut, some quiet itch, told me to slide it into my pocket. My wife, Noelle, came home 10 minutes later, humming to herself like she always did when the office day had been light. She kissed me. She smiled. She complimented the candles. She was perfect. Too perfect. That night, after she fell asleep, I Googled every hotel in the metro area with 8 floors or more. There were 14. I cross-referenced her past 6 months of work trips. 3 overlapped. The next morning, I called the hotel I suspected most, the one closest to her office. "Hello," I said calmly. "I think I left my card in a room a while back. It had the number 827 on it. Could you tell me who last booked it under that number?" "I'm sorry, sir," the receptionist said. "We can't disclose guest information." "No problem," I replied. "I'll call the credit card company. I think it was billed under my account by mistake." There was a pause. Then she said, "The last name on the booking was Coleridge. Checked in 6 times over the past 3 months. Not Noelle's last name. Not mine either." I hung up, heart thudding. Coleridge. It rang a bell, but distant, like an echo I couldn't place. I started digging. That name wasn't in her contacts, but it was in her email. Hidden. Buried under folders labeled for clients and projects. Coleridge was her mentor, according to one buried thread. A visiting consultant. I remembered now, a man with steel gray eyes and a too-firm handshake. He'd sat across from me once at a fundraiser, laughing at some joke of mine Noelle pretended to love. I stared at the screen, bile in my throat. She hadn't just lied. She'd brought him into our orbit. She'd made him familiar. That's when I knew this wasn't a one-time lapse. This was a system, a secret architecture she'd been building beneath our lives. And I was going to tear it down. Quietly. Meticulously. From the inside out. The name Coleridge haunted me for days. Every time Noelle answered a text with a half-smile, I wondered if it was him. Every time she said, "Just one more email," I saw that hotel room. 827. The number carved itself into the back of my mind like graffiti in a sacred space. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed more. So I built my own folder. Password protected. Hidden behind a random invoice in my Dropbox. Inside it, screenshots, calendar cross-references, and every mention of Coleridge in her emails and project reports. It was amazing how often she lied without saying a word. She didn't even change the way she moved through the house. That's what made it worse, how seamless it all was. I started tracking her with a shared location app we had forgotten to uninstall from our old phones. She rarely turned it off. I caught her at the same hotel once. Then again, 2 weeks later. Room 827. It wasn't paranoia. It was fact. Then, I got smart. I sent an anonymous email to Coleridge. Just a sentence. "Does Noelle know your wife found out?" A bluff. Total fiction. But sometimes panic reveals more than evidence. He replied in less than 5 minutes. "Who is this? What do you want?" That told me everything. He was hiding too. From someone. Maybe from everyone. Noelle had no idea. She kissed me the next morning with vanilla on her breath and betrayal on her lips. "You're quiet lately," she said. "Work," I lied. "Just juggling too much." She smiled. "Maybe we should get away for the weekend." I nodded. Great idea. Let her think I was retreating into distraction. Let her believe she still owned the script. That weekend, I went through her backup drive. She was sloppy there. I found a folder named Archive, Events, and inside, a document labeled Client Dinner Notes. But it wasn't about business. It was a list of nights, hotels, outfits, a diary of seduction disguised as logistics. One note stopped me cold. November 12th, 827. Red lace, he said I looked like a fire he couldn't put out. That was 3 days before our daughter's birthday party. Noelle had baked a cake with pink icing, hugged every guest, kissed me like a wife who meant it. And now I saw the burn marks under her skin. It wasn't just an affair. It was a life layered beneath mine. But I wasn't angry anymore. I was methodical. And the first domino was ready to fall. I stopped sleeping next to her. I'd wait until she drifted off, then move to the guest room. "You've been restless lately," she noted one morning, sliding a coffee toward me with that disarming smile. Work dreams, I said. Deadlines. In a way, that wasn't a lie. I was working harder than I ever had on her downfall. I created a new identity, a fake LinkedIn account, a background profile designed to appeal to someone like Coleridge, marketing executive, overseas experience, mutual connections seeded from dummy accounts. I called him Eli on paper. Within a week, Eli had sent a connection request. Coleridge accepted. It didn't take much. A few flattering messages about his recent talks, a question about industry insights, and he was hooked. Men like him are always looking for mirrors that reflect their ego. And while he was busy engaging with Eli, I was engaging with his real life. I found out where he lived. A townhouse in a quiet gated community on the other side of town. I drove by at night, just once, watching lights shift behind expensive blinds. There was no sign of a wife, but there was a child's tricycle in the side yard. Interesting. I pulled property records. The home was in his name, but a woman named Mariah Denning had once co-owned it. A divorce, maybe, or something more recent. I searched her on Facebook. She was private, but her profile picture showed her and a little girl, probably 6, laughing under a sun ad. Coleridge didn't have family photos on his public profiles. Just sleek conference shots and quotes about leadership. The kind of man who lived 2 lives. Like Noelle. I wondered if she knew. If she understood the symmetry. Probably not. She never questioned the parts of Coleridge he hid, because she was too busy hiding her own. That's when I realized I had something powerful. If I played it right, I could not only expose them but make them face themselves in the process. I compiled every bit of digital evidence into a timeline. Each overlap, each lie, each shared deception. A quiet ecosystem of betrayal. And then I created a file called Mutual Mirror. Inside it, copies of all their sins mirrored against each other's lives. I was ready to send it to Mariah, to Coleridge's colleagues, to the one place Noelle feared more than any, her father's inbox. The man who thought I hung the moon for being a rock. But I didn't. I simply learned how to sit still long enough to watch the stars collapse quietly. Noelle's father, Richard Monroe, was the kind of man who didn't shake hands, he crushed them. Ex-military, obsessive about image, and painfully vocal about traditional values. He adored me. Told his golf buddies I was the kind of son-in-law every man wants. If he knew what his daughter had become, he'd cut her out with the precision of a man sharpening knives in the dark. That's why I hesitated. Not because I wanted to protect her, but because I wanted to time it right. Richard was leverage. A tool, not a target. He'd be most effective when everything else started to crumble. Meanwhile, Coleridge had taken the bait. Eli offered to set up a meeting over drinks to discuss a crossover opportunity. He responded within 20 minutes, absolutely. I'll make time. I knew the place, Linden and Row. An upscale cocktail lounge with black leather booths and soft jazz humming through gold speakers. Noelle had mentioned it once, casually. It was where they'd met with clients. The irony nearly choked me. I reserved a booth in the back under Eli's name and waited, but I didn't show up. Instead, I watched from a rental car across the street. At exactly 6:48 p.m., Coleridge walked in. Alone. Dressed to impress. Phone in hand. Looking confident, like a man about to charm his next prey. I waited 45 minutes. He never left. Never called. Just texted once, then again, pacing near the bar. I imagined his confusion growing, self-doubt flickering beneath the tailored confidence. And that's when I sent the message from Eli's account. You like hiding, don't you? Must be exhausting. But don't worry, everyone finds the mirror eventually. He read it immediately. No reply. But I saw his posture change, shoulders tightened, eyes scanning the room. I watched him realize he wasn't in control anymore. That someone was watching. That his secrets had begun whispering louder than he could silence them. I didn't follow him when he left. I'd made my point. The game was now his to panic through. That night, Noelle curled up next to me like a satisfied thief. You've been distant lately, she whispered. Everything okay? I kissed her forehead. Never better. I meant it. Because now the chessboard was mine, and I wasn't playing to win. I was playing to watch them both tip over their own kings. Coleridge didn't go dark. That surprised me. In fact, he did the opposite. He posted more. Polished photos. Conference selfies. Motivational garbage. But I could tell something had shifted. His captions grew defensive, wordier, like a man trying to convince himself he still mattered. He was performing for the digital crowd, trying to drown out the voice in his head. Good. Let him spiral in silence. Noelle, meanwhile, acted like everything was glowing. "We should try for a baby," she said one morning over coffee. I nearly dropped the mug. "I mean," she added, "we've talked about it before. And maybe it would bring us closer again." My breath froze in my chest. The audacity. The gall. The idea that she could set fire to our home and then plant flowers in the ashes like nothing ever happened. I didn't respond. Just nodded. Let her think the idea lived in me too. Later that night, I opened the folder labeled Mutual Mirror and added a new document. Her words versus her actions. I began cataloging each moment she expressed love, verbal affirmations, anniversary gifts, public compliments, and cross-referenced them against her hotel visits, text threads, and calendar invites to late client dinners. I was creating not just evidence, but a story. Something cold, factual, indisputable. The kind of story even she couldn't rewrite. I sent a teaser to Coleridge's professional email. No signature. Just the title. "You're not the only one she lies to." Attached, a single image. A screenshot of Noel's text to him that read, "I wish I could tell him, but it would break him." The message was read within minutes. No reply. The next morning, Noel's phone buzzed nonstop. She said it was work, that her team was being dramatic. I smiled. "They're lucky to have you." She kissed my cheek and left. I followed. 2 cars behind. She didn't go to the office. She went to a park. Met Coleridge on a bench. They argued. Not visibly loud, but their bodies told the story. He leaned in. She pulled back. He gestured to her phone. She looked over her shoulder more than once. I filmed the entire exchange. No sound. Just the collapse. I saved the video under a new file name. Trust. Breaking. They left separately. She went straight to a coffee shop. Ordered something she didn't drink. Sat alone, scrolling through her phone, fingers shaking. I sat outside, watching. For the first time since this began, she looked small. Not confident. Not cunning. Just a woman drowning in her own design. And I had no intention of pulling her out. The mask didn't fall all at once. It cracked. Slowly. Hairline fractures in the porcelain face Noel wore for everyone around her. At home, she became distant, cautious. She flinched when I entered rooms unexpectedly. She double-checked her phone before setting it down. And her eyes, those calculating eyes, were beginning to betray fear. It was beautiful. She was unraveling without even knowing where the thread had started. I kept the routine intact. Made dinner. Took out the trash. Kissed her goodbye in the mornings. Every gesture was a lie, but the kind you tell when you're building a stage, not saving a marriage. Meanwhile, I found Mariah Denning, Coleridge's ex. The woman from the Facebook photo. I reached out through a burner account. "You don't know me, but I know what he did to you. If you want answers, I have them." She didn't reply immediately. But 3 days later, she did. Talk. I laid it out carefully. Not all at once. Just enough to show her I wasn't some internet troll. Just enough for her to realize that the man who disappeared from her life had simply shifted shape and ruined someone else's. She was quiet for a while. Then she said, "I always knew he'd eventually destroy himself. I just didn't think I'd get to watch." I smiled at the message for a long time. I asked if she'd be willing to talk to someone in Noel's orbit. Someone who could confirm what they had been doing from another angle. She said yes. We drafted a letter together. Carefully. A statement, not to accuse, but to illuminate. A testimony of who Coleridge was, how he lied, how he moved through women like they were chapters he never finished. It was ready. The next step was choosing the audience. And I had someone in mind, Noel's firm's compliance officer. She'd always bragged about how airtight her position was. "They'd never question me," she once said. "I know too much." Perfect. I printed the letter, sealed it in a manila envelope, and mailed it anonymously from a town 2 hours away. It would land on a Tuesday, 2 days before Noel's quarterly review. The timing couldn't have been better. That week, she bought flowers. Cooked a meal I hadn't seen in years. Tried to touch me in ways I no longer responded to. "I feel like I haven't been present," she whispered. "I want to fix that." I kissed her gently. "We'll get there." I lied. Because the truth was, we weren't going anywhere. She was about to be anchored to the wreckage she built with her own hands. Tuesday came like a storm disguised in sunlight. Noel left for work early, confident in her black blazer and nude lipstick, heels clicking with precision. I watched her drive off, coffee in hand, oblivious to what was already waiting for her at the office. I timed it perfectly. The envelope, delivered through internal mail, would have landed on her compliance officer's desk by 9:15 a.m. Inside, Mariah's letter, neatly typed, signed only with her initials. Attached was the file I had compiled: travel overlaps, hotel bookings, calendar inconsistencies, email headers. Nothing salacious. Just structure. Order. A blueprint of deceit. By 11:34 a.m., Noelle's location showed she had left the office. Not for a client meeting, not for lunch. She went home, but I wasn't there. I had taken the day off, without telling her. I watched from 2 houses down in a parked car. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat in the kitchen for almost 20 minutes, still in her heels, staring at nothing. Her phone lit up. She didn't answer. Then she stood, walked to the liquor cabinet, and poured herself a drink. It was 11:58 a.m. She hated day drinking. Said it. Felt weak. Another mask slipping. I waited until she left again, changed out of her blazer, no makeup, hair in a loose ponytail. She drove aimlessly. No destination. No calls. Just her and the silence. She didn't return until after 5. That night, she didn't say a word. She ate quietly. Washed her plate. Stared at her phone like it was a bomb with no timer. I went to bed early. Let her sit in the quiet of her guilt. Around midnight, I heard her whisper something in the dark. I pretended to be asleep. "I think I ruined everything," she said to the darkness. I didn't move. Didn't answer. Let her confession evaporate in the air between us. That was the first time she admitted something real, if only to herself. The next morning, I checked her laptop. She hadn't cleared her history. She'd Googled, "Can emotional affairs get you fired?" and "signs your husband knows." I smiled at the second one. She was right to wonder. But it wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was strategy. I had her on edge. She was reacting. But the real move? That was still in my pocket. Still waiting. Still gleaming like a blade beneath velvet. And when I finally pulled it, there would be no mistaking what it cut. 3 days later, she asked if I wanted to go away for the weekend. "Just us," Noelle said, trying to sound casual. "Maybe the lake house?" The lake house had always been her retreat spot. When her mother died, we'd spend a week there in silence, healing. When she got her promotion, we celebrated there with champagne and dancing in socks. Now she wanted to return there, not for celebration or solace, but control. She was trying to get ahead of whatever she suspected was coming. "Sounds nice," I said. "Let's do it." I packed lightly, brought my laptop, my hidden folder, and the last envelope I had yet to send. The one marked with Richard Monroe's name. Noelle's father. The only man she ever seemed truly afraid to disappoint. He didn't email. He didn't text. So I wrote it all out, on thick stationery, with the same tone he always used: measured, efficient, unemotional. I included key dates, evidence, a single photo. No emotion, just facts. I sealed it and packed it next to my socks. When we arrived at the lake house, Noelle tried to recreate nostalgia. She cooked the same pasta she'd made on our second anniversary. She wore the old sweatshirt I loved. She even played the playlist from our wedding reception. But nostalgia only works when there's still something honest beneath it. And now, every lyric felt like a punchline. That night, we sat on the porch. The lake was glass under the moonlight. She reached for my hand. "Are you happy with me?" she asked. "Right now?" "No. In general." I let a beat of silence pass. "You want the truth?" She nodded. "Then yes. I'm happy. Happier than you'd believe." Her face softened. She thought she'd won something back. But what I didn't say was why. Because happiness, I'd learned, comes not from being loved, but from watching the lies collapse without lifting a finger. The next morning, I woke early, before the sun. I walked half a mile down the road to the post drop and mailed the envelope to Richard Monroe. No return address. Just the truth. When I returned, she was still asleep, peaceful, unaware that the countdown had begun. That the man she'd spent her whole life trying to impress was about to read the version of her she never intended anyone to see. And this time, I wouldn't be the one. Shattered in the fallout. By Monday, the silence had changed. Noelle was quieter, but it wasn't the soft kind. It was brittle. She moved through the house like she was listening for something that hadn't arrived yet. She kept her phone close. She jumped when the doorbell rang. I said nothing. Just watched the countdown unfold. The envelope would have landed in Richard Monroe's mailbox Saturday morning, first post. He lived in a gated community known for timely delivery. That meant he'd had the entire weekend to read it, to sit with it, to plan his next move. He was a man who didn't do emotions. He did consequences. And I knew exactly what was coming. It happened on Tuesday. Noelle came home early. Her face was pale. Her hands trembled slightly as she set her keys on the counter. "My dad called me today," she said. voice soft. He told me to take some time and reflect on the kind of woman I'd become. I stayed quiet. He said he was disappointed. That's all. Just that. Her eyes welled up, but no tears fell. He's never said that to me. Not once. I let her sit in the silence. Let her hear how empty the house sounded when the lies stopped echoing. That night, she didn't eat, didn't speak, just curled up in the corner of the couch, staring out the window. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unsaved number lit the screen. I caught a glimpse. They know. She turned the screen over quickly, but I had already seen enough. Coleridge was unraveling too. Whether it was his firm, a mutual contact, or someone else entirely, the mirror I'd built was finally showing both of them what they really looked like. I checked my email. A single message from an unknown account. You win. No subject. No signature. But I knew it was him. Coleridge had finally realized he wasn't playing chess. He was the piece. A disposable one. I archived the message. No reply necessary. The house was quiet again by midnight. Noelle had gone to bed early. She didn't even fake a kiss goodnight. I walked through the living room, collected the last few printed files, and placed them in the fireplace. I didn't need them anymore. The truth was no longer mine to manage. It had been delivered. It was spreading. And tomorrow, I'd begin the final move. The one she'd never come back from. The final move needed an audience. Not strangers. Not lawyers. People who knew us. Believed in us. People who would feel it when the truth landed like a thunderclap. So I planned a party. A modest one. A belated birthday gathering for me. Just a few close friends, I told Noelle. Some old coworkers, your sister, Mason, and Liv. She hesitated. You sure you're up for it? Yeah, I said with a smile. Feels like the right time to reconnect. The irony made my chest hum. I sent the invitations through email. Casual. Light. Gave it a theme. Resilience. Noelle even laughed when she saw it. That's so you, she said. Always trying to find the deeper meaning in things. I let her believe it. Let her choose the wine, set the playlist, arrange the hors d'oeuvres. She was playing hostess to the unveiling of her own portrait. The night of the gathering, the house was warm with laughter. Everyone toasted. Hugs. Smiles. Stories. I watched her drift through the room, polished and composed, her smile lighting up every interaction. The perfect partner. The beloved daughter. The admired friend. And when the time felt right, just as the group settled in the living room, drinks in hand, I stood up. I just want to thank everyone for coming, I began. It means a lot. This past year has been transformative. A few nods. Noelle touched my arm, proud. And I've learned something important, I continued. Resilience isn't just about recovery. It's about recognition. Recognizing truth, even when it shatters the illusion you built your life around. The room grew quieter. And sometimes, truth arrives quietly. In hotel receipts. In message threads. In names whispered just out of earshot. Names like Coleridge. Noelle froze. Her glass tilted slightly. Her sister's eyes flicked toward her. This isn't a birthday speech, she said under her breath. No, I said, turning to her. It's not. I pulled a remote from my pocket and tapped it. The TV blinked on. A slideshow. Innocent at first, photos from vacations, holidays, smiles. Then, emails. Calendar screenshots. Blurred photos of room 827. Her hand on Coleridge's chest. Her words and texts. I wish I could tell him. Silence. Breathless. Raw. Noelle stood, mouth open. What is this? This, I said quietly, is the part where you stop pretending. She looked around the room, at her sister, at Mason, at our friends. No one spoke. No one defended her. The silence wasn't just judgment. It was the sound of every mask, cracking at the same time. Noelle didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stood there, frozen, like a woman watching her own reflection fracture and realizing it was never real to begin with. No one moved. Even the wine glasses seemed to hold their breath. Then Liv, Mason's wife, quietly stood and left the room. Her silence spoke louder than any insult. Noelle's sister followed. A moment later, the door clicked shut. One by one, they exited. Some with a glance of apology, others with nothing at all. She tried to speak. Please, can we talk? Not like this, not tonight, I said. Tonight isn't about repair. It's about reality. Her hands trembled. You blindsided me. You lived in a lie and called it a marriage. I just held up the mirror. She opened her mouth again, but I walked past her. Went to the kitchen. Poured the last of the scotch and stared at the ice as it cracked in the glass. Behind me, she hovered in the hallway, unsure whether to follow or vanish. "Do you hate me?" she asked, voice splintered. "No," I said. "Hate still implies I care." "Then what do you feel?" "Freedom." And for the first time in weeks, I meant it. She left around midnight, after packing a single bag and avoiding eye contact. I didn't stop her. I didn't ask where she'd go. That wasn't my concern anymore. Mason texted the next morning. "That was the most silent room I've ever been in." I replied, "Truth doesn't need volume." I took the next few days off. Cleared the house. Deleted photos. Cleaned closets. Not out of rage, but precision. I wanted the next chapter to be free of debris. On Friday, I got a message from her father. Just 2 words. "I understand." That was enough. I knew what it cost him to say even that. And I knew what it meant. She wouldn't be hiding behind family legacy anymore. Not behind me. Not behind Coleridge, who, by the way, was now under formal HR review, according to a forwarded message from Mariah. Everything was unfolding like clockwork. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just steady. Inescapable. On Sunday, Noelle returned, not to beg, but to drop off a few boxes. She didn't ask for anything. Didn't demand an explanation. We stood on opposite sides of the room like strangers who used to be something else. "Is this really it?" she asked. "No more words." "You had years of words," I said. "This is the part where you listen." She nodded. For once, she had nothing to say. And in that moment, her silence finally sounded like the truth. She didn't come back after that. Not for her shoes. Not for the necklace she used to wear only on our anniversaries. Not even for the last framed photo of her and my mother. I boxed everything and labeled it with cold, perfect handwriting. Noelle, return or discard. I didn't rush the process. I moved like someone sweeping the remains of a collapsed house, not bitter, just thorough. Meanwhile, the echoes of exposure continued. Coleridge had taken a leave of absence. Mariah sent me a copy of the internal email she received from a colleague. He said something about health issues. Nobody's buying it. She added a comment at the end. He always thought people would protect him. Turns out, no one's willing to burn with him. Noelle's world, once polished and insulated, was quiet now. I checked her social media, not obsessively, just once. Her accounts had vanished. No photos. No updates. No carefully crafted narratives. I imagined her sitting in some small apartment, rewriting her story. Or maybe not. Maybe she was just staring at blank walls, wondering how it all slipped through her fingers. But I didn't dwell on it, because I had started sleeping again, dreaming again, breathing differently. I began going for morning walks, something I hadn't done in years. Not because I needed steps, but because I finally had space. I spoke to people differently now, more directly, with less fear of their perceptions. When your life implodes and you survive it, there's something invincible in the wreckage. One night, I pulled out the old guest book from our wedding. It had been tucked in a box, forgotten. I flipped through the pages, notes from family, friends, even Noelle's college roommate who wrote, "You two are forever energy." I laughed out loud. Not bitterly, just honestly. Then I tore the page out, fed it into the fireplace, and watched it curl into ash. Forever is a word best reserved for people who show up fully, who don't keep pieces of themselves hidden in hotel rooms and encrypted calendars. I wasn't angry anymore, not even at her. But I wasn't done either. Because while the world knew now, while her career and image had been punctured, Coleridge had still escaped real consequence. He had disappeared behind vague statements and paid PR. I couldn't allow that. The next chapter wasn't about emotion. It was about precision. And the final move was almost ready. The revenge I planned wasn't about ruin. It was about revelation. I didn't want to destroy Coleridge's life. I wanted him to live in full view of the truth he could no longer outrun. I began quietly. A professional email to the board of a leadership foundation he'd recently joined. He was listed as a keynote speaker for their Integrity in Business series. The irony nearly choked me. My message was short. Are you aware of Mr. Coleridge's current HR investigation regarding misconduct and abuse of influence during client engagements? I can provide documentation if needed. Attached was a redacted excerpt from the internal complaint Mariah had shared. I sent it anonymously. No response. But the next week, his name was removed from the speaker list. The week after that, the announcement was wiped from the archive. No press release. Just a silent erasure. That's the thing about institutions, they don't apologize. They just pretend you were never there. Noelle, too, had begun fading from relevance. A former colleague reached out to me privately. She applied for a senior strategist role with our firm. I thought you should know. I thanked her. Said nothing else. But I knew the past was catching up to Noelle, not because I was chasing her, but because truth travels even when you stop walking. That night, I stood in the middle of our living room. Alone. Still. It was clean now, new rug, new furniture. No trace of the woman who once ruled every corner of it. I poured a glass of wine and opened the last envelope I prepared months ago, a simple collection of screenshots and a written statement, notarized, detailing the full scope of the affair and the professional overlap that violated both company codes and common decency. It was addressed not to a person, but to a mailing list. Former clients, partners, industry peers. BCC'd, curated, and timed. Not to gossip. To warn. I scheduled it. Midnight Friday. The truth in their inboxes by morning. I didn't need applause. I didn't need chaos. I just needed their faces when they saw the man they trusted. Was nothing more than a mirror cracked beyond repair. Friday came quiet and unassuming. No storms, no tension in the air, just stillness. I made coffee like it was any other morning, read the news, let the dog out. But beneath it all, the truth was ticking like a bomb set to detonate at midnight. I reviewed the email one last time. Subject, a professional courtesy regarding Ethan Coleridge. It wasn't dramatic. No all caps. No flaming accusations. Just the truth, laid out like a legal briefing. The following content contains confirmed documentation of personal and professional misconduct by Mr. Ethan Coleridge. It is shared with the intention of protecting future partners, clients, and associates. It included 3 PDFs, one with the timeline, one with evidence excerpts, and one containing the HR confirmation email. All names were included. No shadows left to hide behind. At 11:59 p.m., I hit send. Not from my personal account. From an identity I had built over months, a whistleblower persona with credibility, history, and a quiet, firm voice. The ripple started by sunrise. Mason texted at 7:12 a.m. Bro, what did you do? I asked, what do you mean? He sent a screenshot, LinkedIn posts lighting up, comments buzzing with veiled references. We trusted him. Shocked isn't even the word. Everything makes sense now. The emails had landed. People were talking. Coleridge's face, once used for branding and workshops, was suddenly missing from home pages. 3 contacts from the BCC list responded to the sender alias. One simply wrote, "Thank you. We almost hired him again." Another said, "I knew something was off. I'm so sorry you had to carry this." Noelle called. First time in 2 weeks. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. "It's all over, isn't it?" she said, breathless. "I don't know how you did this, but I hope you're proud." I wasn't proud. I was peaceful, because this wasn't vengeance soaked in rage. This was justice composed with elegance. And finally, he wasn't the only one who had to explain his past. Tomorrow, I'd write the last page. Not to relive the fire, but to walk through the smoke and never look back. I woke up to silence, not the heavy kind, but the peaceful one that comes after the storm has passed. The inbox I used for the exposure had over 70 new replies. Some were brief acknowledgments. Others were long, stunned messages from former colleagues of Coleridge's, sharing their own suspicions, some even adding their own stories. A few asked if they could help ensure his reputation never resurfaced. I didn't reply to most, just archived everything. The mission was complete. The truth was loose in the world, and no PR firm could pull it back. Noelle's name wasn't trending, but it was being whispered in places she used to walk with pride. I knew from a mutual contact that she'd been ghosted by 2 job prospects. Her sister blocked her. Her father? He hadn't spoken to her in over a week. That was the one silence she truly couldn't handle. Around noon, she showed up. Not announced. Not angry. Just depleted. Her face was pale, makeup less, her posture a far cry from the confident woman who once ran boardrooms and manipulated timelines like a conductor leading an orchestra. "You win," she said, standing in the doorway. I didn't respond. Everyone knows. The video. The emails. Ethan's being investigated in 3 places. I know. "Why didn't you just leave me?" she asked. "Why all this?" I stepped closer. "Because walking away would have let you keep the mask. I wanted to show you what it's like when it melts in your hands." Her eyes welled with tears. "Was I really that awful?" "No," I said. "You were clever, and practiced, and selfish. But mostly, you were a coward. You didn't have the guts to end it honestly. So I did it for you." "What happens now?" she whispered. "Now you rebuild. Or vanish. Or lie again. That's your choice." Mine is to live a life where you're no longer the main character. She nodded, tears finally falling. Goodbye, she said. It already was, I replied. She left, quietly, without a word more. I stood there for a moment. The air in the house felt different, lighter, but grounded. The war was over. The masks were gone. Tomorrow, I would begin writing again. Not about pain, but about freedom. Because revenge wasn't the story. It was the ending the story deserved.